Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Strive Summit podcast. This is your host, Alex Hanna, and with me today I have Heath Robertson from VDC Specialists. Heath, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, my name's Heath Robertson. I'm the owner and founder of VDC Specialists. And what we do is build constructible electrical models that are ready for prefabrication for contractors across the country.
And that's Heath Robertson, and thank you for coming on. No, we appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on. I think the first time we met, we were at Advancing Prefab 2023.
It had to be three. It was in Phoenix, so I think it
Yeah, it
had to
was
be
Phoenix,
three.
and I think you were actually one of the first people to recognize me for Strive, which was absolutely amazing. Definitely, definitely made me feel like I was doing something right. So I do appreciate that, and since then, I mean, I've been kind of following you on LinkedIn and stuff. I mean, you've been blowing up. You've gotten to a new facility, right? You just moved into a bigger
Yeah,
building.
yeah, I appreciate that. And likewise, it's super exciting to watch what you're doing all the time. And yeah, so it was just July of this last year that we moved into our new office. We were tired of everybody making fun of us. They were saying that we had bunk beds for desks because we had so many people crammed into our tiny office. It was the first office we ever had. To say we outgrew it would be an understatement. And yeah, now we've got this nice new expanded space, so we're ready to bring on more team members and keep on growing.
Yeah, that's actually really awesome. Yeah, I saw the building and I was like, "Damn, Heath, you blow it up." No, that's really great, and congratulations on that. Have you been
Thank you.
playing around with any tech or anything lately? Any kind of cool VR scanner stuff?
You
Any
know,
cool
we've
projects?
we've been really fortunate to work on a lot of really cool projects. Unfortunately, if I told you what they were, I'd have to kill you. But
Okay, so DoD, NASA,
no, I mean
Space
we've just
Force.
been really fortunate ever since starting that I feel like we've just consistently had really cool projects to work on. So our very first project as a company actually was a Department of Homeland Security project.
Wow.
And it was a BSL-4 containment laboratory. So depending on how nerdy you are, that's like top of the top, as far as containment levels for laboratories. And it was just a huge one of a kind project. I think it was built to withstand a direct hit from an F5 tornado. So it was nuts, and we got to do that with Mortensen, and that was just a great way to start. And since then, we've gotten to do a lot of like the big data centers, other fun stuff, which leads us into being pretty early and doing things like VR reviews, doing lots of like laser scanning to ensure that what was modeled is in
Hmm.
alignment. So I feel really fortunate to to have been so early in a lot of that to where
Yes.
now I'll see headlines about like, hey, check out this new thing with VR reviews. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, we were doing that like 2 or 3 years ago, right? So
Right.
just really fortunate and really excited. But the latest thing that I'm actually the slow one on this one, and it's AI. So I had tried with like former versions of like Chat GPT to leverage AI for what everybody else was saying they were doing,
Mm.
right? And they were like, you just put in an idea and it can write programming for you. And every time I would put something in, I would be like, hey, I need this in Python, and it wouldn't even come out as like Python is the language. And I'm like, well, this isn't useful. So I was actually at an MEP Force event with Evolve, and Jared Chrisman was there talking,
Okay.
and he did his whole presentation on AI.
Mm.
And so afterwards, I pulled him to the side and I was like, "Come on, man, are you real? Like, because this is my experience, right?" I'm like, "Are you just trying to pump it up?" And and he just basically encouraged me to give it a second chance. And this was less than 6 months ago. So like I said,
Right.
I'm super late on this. He encouraged me to give it a second chance. And so I got stuck. I was programming, I don't know. I just like I had this series of lists and I just needed a Python script that would break it at the intervals that I wanted to.
Hmm.
Super simple if you know what you're doing. Not for me. And so basically Jared like came on in my head. He's like, you got to give it another try, right? And so I did, and miraculously it was like 4 or 5 back and forths, and I had functioning script to plug into the rest of my program. So I had to send him a message afterwards. I'm like, hey man, I just want you to know I was thinking about you last night. And because of that, like I got functioning code that was able to let me actually stop working before 10 p.m. So that was pretty cool.
That's actually incredible. So for those who don't know, Strive is pretty much ran off AI. So um so I have a my own personal GPT I created that is me as an AI assistant. So all the information and ideas I have, I feed it and I train it. And I tell it like, hey, don't tell people about this, or like, hey, keep this one a secret. And so I'm like basically giving myself notes. And then when I need to generate ideas for a post on my socials, or if I need like topics to talk about, or talk about coming up with like some curriculums and stuff, I take my AI and say, hey, his name is Ailish, AILESH. And I've decided I'm going to make a whole team of AI people, give them whole profiles and everything. But yeah, all my posts are all trained by me, so they come out the way they read. So I mean,
That's awesome.
it you can
So did
obviously
you
tell it.
actually email me to set this up, or is this the first time we're actually interacting on
This
this?
is our first interaction. Yeah, I gave you the link, and then now you came here, and this is the first time. So it's like it's all done through AI, and it's been absolutely
That's
incredible. It's
awesome.
probably the only way I'll be able to continue to do this, being solo right now. I mean,
That is awesome.
even this podcast right now, it's all recorded and everything, but I use Riverside AI, promo in the
Yep.
bio. Um, Riverside does AI where it will chop up and get rid of all the ums and the spaces and stuff, and then
That's
it'll give me little
awesome.
short clips. So all the clips you see on all the socials, that's all AI driven. I edit a few things. Like
Wow.
it's not perfect. You still got to do
Right.
some work, but it's like, man, I could do 10 times the amount of stuff I can do by hand. Like
That is amazing. Do you remember the show, or did you ever watch the show Silicon Valley from HBO?
I get told to watch that one all the time. I
Oh
caught
my
little glimpses
gosh.
of it. Is it good?
So there's a scene where Guilfoyle, like kind of like the grumpy character,
Mm-hmm.
is messaging Dinesh, and so like he's tired of Dinesh bothering him, so he just sets up an AI to handle all Dinesh's nonsense. And it's not until like days later, like Guilfoyle's filling up coffee behind Dinesh, where Dinesh is like, "Wait a minute, how is he doing this? Like, how's he getting back to me so fast?" And that it all unravels. But yeah, that's awesome. You did that to me.
No, I didn't trick you. I didn't trick you. They're automated emails. They just come out. Yeah, no,
Oh, that's
I
awesome.
I think AI has been extremely pivotal for businesses in general. And in the BIM world, like AI is way more than GPTs. Like there is generative design, which is I mean, you can call it AI. I think that's more programming, but
Sure.
AI. There's companies like Hypar. I don't know if you heard of Hypar.
I'm not familiar with them.
So Hypar, I think, has been testing text to building generation. So if you go on there, you can type in the text of what your building needs to be. First couple stories, parking garage, second couple stories of business, and then the top stories residential and stuff in the shape of an H, right? And it'll make
Yeah,
that
yeah.
building and put those levels in there.
That is
Um,
so
you
wild.
can give it locations and it'll move it to locations. It's insane. Like I mean, all this AI stuff is not perfect yet, but it's getting
Sure.
pretty damn close.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Like I said, even from when I tried it like a year ago, just for my simple programming inquiries, to what I tried now just a few months ago, it was a huge leap. And so I'm just really excited to see where it all goes. I've been reading up on some companies, I think you were kind of alluding to, where it'll do like auto routing for some conduits.
mm,
You just plug in like source and then like all the circuits that are out throughout. I mean, it's really exciting stuff, and yeah, it's one of those things I'm definitely keeping my eye on.
yeah, it's gonna be blown up here. I think 2024 is gonna be a good year for AI. 2025 is gonna polish it up, and then you're gonna see all these different companies come out. It's gonna be crazy.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, it's great. So Heath, you're recently at Advancing Prefab 2024. Why don't you gonna
That's
talk a
right.
little about that? How was that?
I always think that the Advancing Prefab show is so much fun, and it's really because number one, so many of our old friends are there. Like it seems like anybody who's anybody is showing up there, and you can at least like have a good friendly interaction with them. And then
Mm-hmm.
the other thing is just with the idea being that the people there, they're trying to push the industry forward, right? Like I hear so many times about how the US is kind of late to building information modeling and is late for prefabrication and all this stuff. And so it's just really encouraging to see so many people coming together and really working to push that envelope. So to not only not be late anymore, but to try to figure out how to really propel that innovation. I just always think it's such a great time. My voice is blown out because of it. It's pretty loud and
Someone's
rowdy.
doing a little karaoke, were you?
Oh my God. Well, it's impossible to go to bed on time when you're at something like that. It just doesn't
Exactly.
happen because like
Right.
everybody's there.
Yep. Yep. Hey, we're gonna be after the show. We're gonna go to this bar. Awesome. I'll see you there. Let me.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, it's
exactly.
no, trade shows are great, and like I think this is the first year I didn't go in the past 3 years. So,
Do you
um,
regret it?
oh man, I got so many texts this year. I was like, maybe I should have. I don't know. So, we'll see. There's a couple other shows I might want to hit this year. We'll see how that goes. But yeah,
Yeah.
events and prefab's always a good one. It's a little
I've heard that
pricey,
MEP
but
Innovations is a good one as well. Have you ever done that one?
no, where's that one at?
I think it was in Florida this year. But yeah, I mean, anybody I've talked to that went said it's a great time. It's smaller, but everybody says it's some hard hitting stuff.
Heath, where are you at in the U.S.?
Well, it depends on what day you ask me. So that's a more complicated answer than it should be. So in April of 2022, we opened up our second office, and that's in Dallas, Texas. And so what I've done since then, because I'm kind of a control freak, is and my wife loves it, is 1 month we're in Lawrence, Kansas, right outside of Kansas City, and then the next month we're in Dallas, and then we just keep bouncing back and forth all the time just to make sure that everything looks right and smells right.
Yeah, you got a nice position there, right there in the center. I'm out west. I'm out in Boise, Idaho, so I'm a little
Okay.
further out than Kansas. So maybe that show in Florida might not have been great for me. I'm originally from the Northern Chicagoland area, so
Okay.
every like couple weeks out of the summer, weekends maybe long weekends, you drive from there all the way down
Yeah.
to Florida. You party for 2 days and come back, and that's a normal thing if you're from the region, Midwest. It's always drive everywhere. So,
That's
um,
hilarious. I'm a
yeah,
firm believer in airlines. I'll just say
yeah.
that. I'm like, man, it's a 2 hour drive. Could I get a flight?
Yeah, down the road over here where I'm at could be an hour and a half in Winding Mountain Road. So you gotta ask for specifics.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so I'm really interested on your journey, like where you started and how you got interested in BIM, because we kind of had a little conversation about this before it started about how you know engineering, architecture, those are two large ones that a lot of large colleges focus on. And if you go to those classes, you're like, oh, I want to be an architect. I'm going to design. When you're an architect and you're an underling, you're doing a lot of grunt work.
Yeah.
Engineering. Oh, I want to be engineering. I'm going to build bridges and stuff. You're going to do a lot of calculations and math and stuff. And then there's BIM, which is not well known, and that's just the busy bee guys.
Yeah.
And that is another career in itself. You don't have to be an architect or engineer. You can just go do BIM for
Yeah.
architects, for engineers, for firms, for MEPs. And so I'm curious at how you got into it because so far everyone's fallen into it.
Yeah.
So how did you start? Where'd you come from, and then how'd you get to where you're at?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I probably had the most direct path you've ever heard. So we'll just start at the beginning. So the day I graduated high school, I left to go tour with a rock and roll band all over the country. And
Oh,
so
really?
it's the natural first step to becoming a BIM guy is you go and play rock and roll music in a touring act. When
Well,
that fell apart, I joined the army, which was the
okay.
obvious next step. And then when that fell apart, I went back to school to finish out my drafting certificate that I'd started all the way back in high school. All right. So, funny story though, even at that point, I'd never even heard of BIM. And so that's part of what you were alluding to. And it just blows my mind. I finished out my certificate and I went and I worked for this engineering company and I was just doing kind of the traditional draftsman role, right? So they were doing like substation and distribution planning and engineering. And so
Hmm.
I was just drawing up basically like one lines for substations, fun stuff like that. Um, Basically, after I got tired of that, I saw a job opening at a local electrical contractor. And I was like, well, I know electrical stuff. I've been doing
I've
like
been doing
these
one
one
lines, yeah.
lines. Yeah, this is easy. And about 5 minutes after starting that position at the electrical contractor, I realized I knew nothing. You know what I mean? They were so early in using models for like prefabrication and true project planning, right? So it was no longer this theoretical thing, and it's not just like, oh, this is the plans and they'll figure it out. It was the exact opposite of that. It was like, how is this going to happen
Right.
exactly?
Right.
And it was really exciting for me. I got to grow a lot within that company. I was really fortunate. My office was actually attached to the prefab shop. And what they did is they had a foreman who sat at the same desk as me. So we shared this space. So that way, like, I knew the computer, he knew the system, and they basically just forced us to melt our brains together a little bit, until finally, like, I got a little bit longer leash, got my own office that was attached to the prefab shop. I still did not know everything,
Hmm.
evidenced by the fact that the shop foreman would come and drag me out of my office and be like, "How do you expect me to bend this offset? Here's a pipe. Here's the bender. Bend that
Do it.
offset. You
Yep.
want me to do it? You do it." And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
Oh my God.
But
Let.
that was so valuable, right? I
Hmm.
mean, because I don't think there's another way to learn it that as quickly as if you have someone just forcing your hand and holding you accountable and giving you that immediate and clear feedback, we'll say,
Yes.
of how they feel about it.
I would have to agree 100%. I had a very similar experience working at a modular factory where
Yeah.
the office was on the dock, and if you looked outside, that was the factory. And so many times my door's been kicked in. I've had I've had, definite confrontations and stuff. And you learn real quick. Like there's something to be said about having some thick skin when working with contractors, and then you
Absolutely.
learn it's the most valuable learning tool is to go out there and see what's going on.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times like I had a team about 10, and I can count maybe one hand how many times we had a big mistake. Like, hey, just so you know, that window in there is supposed to be bigger. And it's all the way down on line 36 and it ends at 38. So we got to go back to finish. And so
Oh
it
my
was like,
gosh.
and like one of my guys would come up to me. I was like, okay, well, you're gonna walk with me. You're gonna watch me get yelled at, and then hopefully that will make you not want not want to mess up again. And if you enjoy it, then you're just cynical. But
Yeah. Yeah.
so we'd go out there, and I'd be like, hey, I know you're gonna hate me on this one. We gave you the wrong print for box 38. We need that window to be bigger. And he would just give me a saw. He would give me a saw and walk away. He goes, go
Oh
get it done.
man.
Oh yeah. I mean, there was a few times where I would, stay after and help out because I felt really bad about a mistake. And I was like,
Yeah.
let me let me help you like finish the drywall on this wall
Yeah.
because I know I messed up on it. And like, you feel for them. And that connection with the contractors in the field. And like you said, that prefab shop, like that is, you next to the foreman was probably the best BIM training you will ever get.
Oh, it was great.
No one,
And I'm
yeah,
so lucky for that, and I totally relate. I wouldn't be bold enough to say like, "Hey, let me stand in here and help you assemble this," because I know it's like the 3-year-old trying to tie their shoes, right? Like I'm helping,
yeah,
but just getting that feedback and really seeing the impacts of that in such an immediate way, I think is so powerful because it's not just tubes and cubes on a screen, right? It's like, man,
right,
this is impacting these guys' lives. You know what I
right.
mean? Like their whole day at work is based on me doing what I'm doing correctly. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a lot of pressure. And
Right.
especially when you get the estimator who comes in and like a rack's getting thrown away and they're like, "You want to know how much that thing costs?"
Yes.
Oh man, not really. Not
Please
really, man.
don't tell me. Just let me live with my mistakes. I don't need more. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
definitely had that one before. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fun.
But
Um,
that's actually why I'm actually really excited. Right before our Christmas party this last year in December, I actually partnered up with a local tech school where we went into their electrical classroom. They had their instructors come in, and it was just us and them. And I had the entire team work on like bending offsets and mounting boxes and doing KOs on boxes, hanging conduit on strut like up in the air, standing on scaffolding. So, like I said, just like I was meaning before, it it's not that they're like ready to go install the electrical system for the next data
right.
center, but having that hands-on experience, making it be real, I think is one of the most valuable things you can do for anybody working in BIM.
1000%. And that kind of goes along like whenever I'm training someone is move through BIM, move through Revit with a purpose, right?
Yeah.
That 36-inch pipe that's going to get buried underground somewhere, that is a 3 foot pipe. Like when you go see it on site, it's way bigger than it is on screen, right?
Yeah,
And so you gotta putting them in that space is great because then they think about the little things too. Like, oh, I
absolutely.
gotta put the conduit on the rack, and how are they gonna tighten it down? Can I even get my hands back there to do it? And then
Exactly.
there's many times where I've looked at a model and gone to my guys, so it's like, how's the guy gonna install that?
And
You've
like, I don't
gapped
know, he'll do it. He'll just
you
do it.
you've gapped the floor trusses about 4 inches apart on a hanger. How are they gonna get in there and put that hanger? Oh, I don't know. I
Yeah,
just did it. I just did. Oh yeah. Well, now you got to think about it. So
yeah.
yeah, it definitely takes some critical thinking skills, and that's one that sometimes can't be trained, but it's great if you can train it.
Absolutely. And like you were saying, understanding what's in the model. Like, yeah, it's a 36-inch diameter pipe. There's so many times for my crew in the office, they'll like pull out the tape measure and be like, I just want you to know, like, this is what we're talking about. You know what I mean? Like, really frame it up, like relate it to something physical around them. It goes a long way because it's so easy to lose perspective because it's so easy to fly from one side of a building to another in Navisworks.
Yep.
And then you're like,
Yep.
you realize this is a quarter mile, right? Like,
Yeah. you you can't run this.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I had often had like with PVC, we often had all the fittings and like little cutoffs and stuff in this thing. I was like, okay, so like you put it together and kind of like, oh, this is not going to work. That's not going to fit. Like you start spacing stuff out. Next time, grab a 36-inch cut off and just bring it in the office and plop it on someone's desk. Like that's what you're modeling right now. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
it's
huge.
amazing. So how did VDC start? How did what brought on that idea? Where did you go from there?
Yeah, it was wild. So I worked at that electrical contractor and absolutely loved it. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
every single day was a new challenge. It was awesome. Then I had a short pit stop at a local engineering firm because I thought that we'd be able to bring in some of those skill sets to that engineering side, but we just never seemed to really get traction for that. So I was kind of trying to think of like, what's something I can do to take what I know and really push it further. And because what I've always had an issue with is like if I can see the ceiling, I have a problem. You know what I mean? Like I always want unlimited room to grow. And so basically I was just like, well, I guess I could maybe start my own thing, right? Now it kind of started off as just an idea. And basically my girlfriend at the time, we were getting pretty serious and she was in her last year of pharmacy school.
Oh
And
wow, yeah.
so we were kind of talking, and she's like, her family is very entrepreneurial and has been for multiple generations. My family has not been. Like my parents growing up were janitors at the local school,
Hmm.
and like
Hmm.
they're real salt of the earth people, but it's very much like you clock in, you work really hard, and you clock out, and that's what you do. And so
Right,
like it was
right.
just not in my DNA. But yeah, basically, my girlfriend and now wife was like, "Hey, this is the time to do it, right? Because we like you have money saved up, and worst case scenario, in a year from now, like I'll be making some money. So like we're not going to be homeless no matter what
Hmm.
happens in this scenario." And so that was a heck of a safety net, and I was terrified. But then right after Christmas in 2017, it was like full go. Like I'd built the website, I'd talked to the attorney, made sure everything was all square, I had the company formulated. So then it was the 1st of January in 2018. It became official, and I launched VDC Specialists, which had its world headquarters in my spare bedroom of my duplex at the time. So it was just like laptop, one screen, and a lot of piss and vinegar to back it up, I guess.
That's right. Hey, that's what it takes. That is
Yeah,
exactly what it takes.
but I was really lucky, like very, very early. I got great contracts on that big Department of Homeland Security job that I referred to earlier, the
Hmm.
BSL-4 containment, and they modeled like everything down to the half-inch conduit. And so with that, like I started working with one contractor on the job, and was just working as much as I could, as much as I could. And then another contractor was like, "Hey, we need a little bit of help. Can you do it?" And I'm like, I mean, I'm only working like 12 or 13 hours a day.
Hmm.
I have capacity. And
Yeah,
so like
yeah.
rinse and repeat a few times, and it was literally like clock in, like start working at like 4:30 a.m., work, 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 do a 30-minute break to like slam down some lunch midday, and then work until 11:30 until I just like passed out from exhaustion, and then wake up and do it all over again.
Yep.
And that's where, I refer to my now wife. I can't give her enough credit for number one, tolerating that, and number two, really supporting that. She like just fielded everything. So it was like all I had to do was worry about what I needed to work on, and everything else was taken care of. So it wouldn't have been possible without her support. But yeah, I mean, great clients to start off with, kept me busy. And then I just kept on doing that. And then I'd find a good person to hire. So the very first person I hired is still on board with me today. And
Nice.
he
That's
was an
great.
electrician coming out of the field. And so I interviewed him at a coffee shop because they're still in my spare
Right. You're not going to
bedroom.
bring them in your bedroom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And the interview went really well. So then I had to have an honest conversation with him where I was like, hey, man, I'm willing to have you start. This is the address, and it is my spare bedroom. And but he was a great sport, and yeah, he shows up with his lunchbox on the first day, and he's like, "Where do I put this?" And I was like, "Oh man, I don't
Yeah.
know." Like I was completely unprepared.
Yep.
But he was a trooper. And then it was about 3 months later we got into our first office space, and we've just been continually growing the team ever since. And he's done a great job. He's learned so much, and now he's the regional director for our Kansas office. So yeah, I've just been really fortunate from the very start up until today to have great clients and great people on the team that really, really push it all forward. I would be foolish if I tried to take credit for all of that.
Well, I got it. You mentioned it, like it's all about the wives and the spouses supporting the other ones. I can't tell you how much I appreciate my wife
Yeah.
and supporting me through this journey right now, which is currently yielding this. So it's been she's been extremely supportive, and I can't thank her enough for that.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
everyone else out there, entrepreneur, you got to know you got to have another good partner by your side. No, that's great that you're able to hire that person and keep them on and still do that. That's such
Yeah.
a hard thing to do, is retain. Well, first off, find the right person for the right job, and then retain that person to keep them on. That's
Yeah.
uh, the turnover rate's pretty. I won't say it's bad because everyone's looking for their unicorn,
Yeah.
right? Everyone's got a unicorn or a champion they're looking for, and you can never really find them.
It
But
can be brutal.
it can be brutal. Yep. I had a question about your early days.
Yeah.
What was the rock and roll band's name? Yeah, we're gonna Google this one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Hopefully you don't find too many pictures of my old hairstyle. It was called Building Rome.
Building Rome. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah, there you go. So all you guys out there, if it's on the Spotify or YouTube, Heath, you're about to blow up.
I I will make tens of
That's right.
cents off of all
All the
these
sense.
streams.
All the sense.
No, but speaking on that, I do want to say like I've just been fortunate all my life. In that band, the singer is actually he's still heavily involved in the music industry, and I think it was a year or two ago he became a multi-platinum record producer. So it's just yeah,
Wow.
I've been incredibly fortunate all throughout to just somehow be surrounded by great people. So yeah, shout out to the old band Building Rome. All my videos that are produced are actually done by my old drummer too. So a
Wow.
lot of those guys are still in the creative space, and I just always love seeing what they're doing.
They're playing at the next picnic, right? Yeah. So next question I got is, how old were you when you first found out about BIM? Because when I was going through, right, I went to drafting school. I did the tech thing.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
was I was doing 3D modeling in SolidWorks and 3D printing.
yeah,
I
yeah,
did
yeah.
that. Still had no idea what BIM was. I didn't find out till I was maybe 28,
Wow.
29. Yeah. So I went to school for this
Yeah,
drafting and had
yeah,
no idea what BIM was,
yeah. Exactly.
which is crazy because now it's such a quote unquote buzzword, right?
Right.
But the thing I want to clarify with BIM is it's not just construction, because I was all in on automotive design, manufacturing. Like that was my bread and butter, 3D parametric modeling. I did take Revit for like a half a semester. It was 2013, and I was
Gotcha.
like, pass. No, thank you. I I don't like fractions, not doing that. But yeah,
That's
until I got in this
crazy.
construction space and until I actually like was on LinkedIn and posting about it and talking about it, the community's massive.
Yeah.
But what's even bigger is the amount of people that don't know what it is.
Yeah, and I was
And
definitely in that exact same boat. So I mean, I was exact same. I went to the tech school for drafting. My first semester, I had to do hand drafting, and I'm still bitter about that, Mr. Wade. I've still not forgiven you for making me do that. But so then I went into AutoCAD, and there was maybe like a couple classes within this drafting program about Revit, and it was
mhm,
so like superficial. Like it just like there wasn't a whole lot to it, and it was just kind of like, yeah, this is this weird program, and everybody says they're moving to it someday, but nobody really knows. And
right.
and so that's where it wasn't until basically 2012 when I started working at that electrical contractor that that I really got into it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so, admittedly, I'm late on the take up. But now I look back and I can't imagine doing it another way. I want to revise something I said. So I got into BIM when I was at that electrical contractor, but we were actually still using AutoCAD MEP, believe it
What are
or
you trying to
not.
say? What are you trying to say? Is AutoCAD MEP not BIM?
Oh, it's you want to unwind that ball of
Let's
string right now?
open that can of worms. What do you got?
One thing that always drives me crazy is if people are like, just do the BIM, just do the BIM. I'm
Oh.
like, well, what do you want? We look, it's in the contract. We just need to do the BIM. So whatever's normal, that's what we need to do.
What's normal today?
And then you can trigger a second fit of rage from me and say like, well, we're gonna model it to LOD 400. And I'm like, well, so does that mean what does that mean as far as like, because I'm usually working with the electricians, right?
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
many
Hmm.
times it'll be like, we want LED 400, but we're only doing conduits 2 inch and larger. And I'm like, well, wait, so you want to see like all the knobs and the trinkets on this piece of gear, but you don't care about the big branch rack that's running everywhere? You know what I mean? And that's my big beef with that. But yeah, so between do the BIM and the LOD, I can get real worked up.
Not a fan of LOD. The term is broadly used as far as like a generic term, I think.
Yeah.
350 doesn't exist. There's 300, 400, 500. Okay. 300 and 350 are the same thing. I don't think that if like I did fabrication, I was modeling every stud,
Yeah.
that's LOD 400.
Yeah.
But I don't think I do LOD 400. I'm doing the same. I mean, I'm not putting material on it,
Yeah.
right? I'm still doing LOD 300. 400 at that point just means you're doing something else with it, not the level of detail in the model.
Right. Exactly.
So I think I'm not a fan of it. I like the level of information needed, LOIN. Have you heard of that?
I'm less familiar with that.
So level of information needed is very much like what's your BIMX plan, what's your scope. I need information. I need all the door finishes and handles. I don't need to see all the studs, but I want
Gotcha.
to see all the headers and cripples, right? Okay, that's not an LOD. That's how much detail do you need in this model.
Yeah.
Because if you tell me I want studs, but you really only want headers and cripples, tell me you want headers and cripples and not studs because that's going to save me a lot of time.
Absolutely.
So level of information needed, I think is one clarified has to be clarified in the BIMX plan, and I
Interesting.
also think that your BIMX plan shouldn't be 20 pages. So you kind of gotta take it or leave it what you want, and it's hard to do that, especially with MEPs because when you say LOD 400 MEPs, okay, do you want the couplings and the screws per coupling and all that stuff?
Right.
Do you want to know how much glue is used for every fitting? Do you want like what level of 400 are you looking for?
Yeah.
Do you
Absolutely.
want just piece names and fittings? That's easy. I would consider that 300,
Yeah.
And so that's that LOD beef I got. I think I got the same beef you do.
Yeah.
It's
The
just
the other
and
thing that'll drive me nuts is things like blue bangers. I'm
okay.
in the firm belief it's just like a 2 inch diameter cylinder, and that's all you
Yep.
need because I'm not manufacturing the blue banger, right? We're
Mhm.
buying the blue banger and installing it. So we
Mhm.
don't care about every groove in that blue banger. And that's how you
Oh
take your
man.
Revit file from already being 1 gigabyte to then being 4 and 5 gigabytes, right? Because it's like you got all the threads on an all thread. You've got all this crazy stuff. And I'm like, man, that's not doing anything for anybody, right? So drives me
Makes it
nuts.
pretty makes a pretty picture. I think electrical contractors probably have the biggest models out of all because there's so many little pieces.
Yeah.
So I am curious about this. The workflow for electrical contractors. Are you familiar with mechanical and plumbing workflows as well, or are you just electrical?
So we've done a little bit of work with mechanical and plumbing, but really the meat and potatoes of what we do is electrical. So I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert in those fields by any stretch of the
We'll
imagination.
get into this another time. Maybe I'll put a poll up. But I'm curious of how workflows differ from how you use Revit and Navisworks, how you use ITM content, because plumbing and mechanical, big ITM content users, not very big for electrical.
Not at
Electrical's a lot of
all.
RFAs.
Yeah.
Navisworks is pretty big in the electrical workflow because Navisworks handles gig models pretty well.
No.
Navisworks for mechanical plumbing, it's not so much. Coordination, yes, but maybe not a whole lot as much as electrical. So
Yeah.
I'm curious if your listeners are out there. If I pissed anyone off, please let me know. But if I also want to hear your opinions on it as well. So Heath, I gotta ask, what would you recommend to kids coming in out of college, don't know if they want to go architecture engineer? What would you tell them about BIM that might sway their choice, right, to go BIM?
I think that BIM is such a great field. And the reason I think that is because it is so detailed. It's a true craft. You know what I mean? And so anytime I talk to kids getting ready to graduate from the tech school that I went to or from any of the regional colleges, I always
Mm-hmm.
encourage them to keep an open mind. So it's not even just about BIM. It's just like, hey, when I was in your shoes, I'd never even heard of the field that I have now made a career and launched a company in. You know what I mean? Which is insane to me. So I always tell them it's just about making sure that you're pushing the envelope, making sure that you're working hard, that you're showing up every day, and that you're engaged. And if you're doing those things, so many doors are going to open for you. And for me, BIM has been a great spot for that because so many doors have been opened up. I'm fortunate enough to talk to people all over the country all the time, right, on some of these biggest projects in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just this kid from Kansas. You know what I mean? And that's what's so crazy that like how can this kid from Kansas who'd never even heard of this workflow end up doing this? And
Right.
the crazy thing is like my story is not unique. You have a kind of similar story and a similar rise. And so that's what I always try to impress upon all the people getting ready to graduate or looking for a career is like the fact that this is possible, I mean, is fantastic. And as long as you're willing to show up and latch on, there's almost unlimited potential. You know, some other fields have kind of more of, I call it the escalator path, right? To where it's like you get on, and then in 4 or 5 years, you're going to become a PE. And then in another like 8 to 10 years, you're going to be a partner at a mid-sized firm. And then, you know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of like this is like a nice and set thing. Where in something like BIM, if you dive in head first, if you learn the system, if you spend your free time reading the code books for the systems that you're modeling, you're able to leapfrog and get so far ahead and become so valuable to contractors, to engineering firms, to architectural firms. I mean, it's so dynamic what you can do. I just think it's a world of opportunity. And that's why our office is a melting pot. Like we have some with their masters of architecture, we have some engineers, we have some former field electricians, and they all come in on the first day and sit in the same spot, and they're at the same rank at that point because we care about what do you know and what can you do, and I think there's just very few other places you can go that present equal opportunity no matter where you're coming from.
Yeah, I love that, and that's like exactly what you said. Coming in with bachelor's degrees or coming in as tradespeople, which are great avenues to get into the BIM industry. There you can go to architecture school and engineering and kind of do an associate's in VDC BIM and come
Yeah,
out and get a job. If you go to the trades and if you do 4 years, 2 years minimum, right, and you go to any contractor, they will hire you on the spot for
yeah,
do BIM. I mean,
absolutely.
I'm pretty sure you can attest to this. If anyone comes in with field experience and they say, I want to learn how to draw what I built for 4 years, you're going to say, yep,
Yep,
here's your seat. We'll talk
exactly.
about your pay later. Yeah. Because that experience is so important nowadays because what's happening is, trades are diminishing. There's not people wanting to get into trades. So you lose that, I'm going to call it institutional knowledge, right? There's trades, and then there's also how do you go into the work site. What This is why we use the pliers we use. We put the system in this way because at the end it's going to be like this.
Yep.
That's not in a book. That's
No,
from
it's not.
experience.
Yeah,
And
and that's
so,
what's so valuable, and it's so hard to train if you're just sitting at a computer. Like trying to get a guy who's never been 20 feet in the air in a lift trying to reach over a duct to access a pull point, like it's
mm-hmm,
so hard to beat that into someone. Not that it's impossible, it's just really hard where someone who says, "Hey, I know what I'm trying to do. I know I'm trying to draw this rolled offset, whatever it is." If they're frustrated that they can't figure out how to draw it and they're like, "Hey, how do I do that?" We can show them how to do that all day. It's very easy. But trying to talk someone through the mentality of how the system actually functions and how to visualize what they're up against, yeah, it's that's a tougher route.
I just thought about a great expansion for VDC. You what you got to do is you got to build those certain situations, and then just hang them up or something, and then put your guys in that situation. Be like, hey, you see that? Just I want you to come over here, and I want you to go tighten. Then, oh, it's hard, right? Yeah, because you can't do that. So
Exactly.
you
Or
and you
do the
kind of,
stuff that is technically possible, but it's very uncomfortable, right? So it's like
yes,
so like
yes,
you have them go up in a lift really high up so it's nice and wobbly, and you have a touch point like 3 feet away. So it's like you can lean and you can get there, but you're gonna feel that thing rock a little bit. You know what I mean? Just
get
to
a
get the
fan going
heebie-jeebies
too. Yeah,
going.
yeah, yeah. No, it's hard to train that, and you can't really train that. You get that comes with experience, and
Yeah.
you know, and I'm not a field guy,
Yeah.
but my dad was a mechanical contractor. I came from a blue collar family. I've been on rooftops and put my foot on the edge and like had those heebie-jeebies before I like was able to drive a car.
Oh yeah.
Not that I did it every day. I chose not to do that.
Sure.
But that experience is so valuable to me and anyone else in the industry who understands construction.
Yeah, and that's
I'd
where
rather,
even if you don't have the field experience, just taking it upon yourself to try to gain that perspective. And
yes.
like if you have a fab shop at your company, walk out there, see if they'll let you hang out for the day. If they've got job sites that are close, see if you can make it out to those job sites because there's a lot to learn from the field guys. And honestly, in my experience, if you walk up and ask them sincere questions and they know you're really trying to learn from them, they're going to
Mm-hmm.
have a lot more respect for you. And then next time you're in a tough situation, they'll kind of call you with a little bit different demeanor because they're like, "Hey, I know you're trying to learn, so let me help you get there." Some of them will kind of take you under their wing, and that's the best case scenario.
It's incredible when that happens. Just get out there and ask.
Yeah.
Get yourself a vest and a hard hat, get it dirty, and just walk on site and look. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. I don't condone any of that. No, Heath, I appreciate you coming on today. Today was a great session having you here. Great episode. Anything you want to plug at the end here before we head out?
No, man, I just want to once again say thank you so much for having me on. I love watching what you're doing. I appreciate you giving me this platform to let some of my rants out about LOD and all that fun stuff. But no, I just consider myself very fortunate. Once again, I am the owner of VDC Specialists. We're really proud of the work that we do with electrical contractors all over. So if you need help with your modeling or coordination, feel free to reach out. But Alex, thanks you again so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Heath.